Beverly Klein's white SUV was nose first in what used to be my grandfather's Snowman. The top hat was pancaked under her bumper, and a carrot was lodged in the grill like some kind of tragic orange cigar. Airbags hung from the steering wheel like surrender flags. Beverly sat there behind a spider-webbed windshield, pearls crooked around her neck, and somehow she still had that clipboard in her hand. She was shrieking something about unauthorized seasonal statuary while the tow truck driver filmed her on his phone. The neighborhood kids had gathered on the sidewalk, and they were chanting in perfect unison, "Frosty wins. Frosty wins." 3 hours earlier, I had been living my usual quiet life on Alderloop in the Pine Key HOA community here in Mapleford. My name is Nolan Price, and I am what you might call a calm, spreadsheet-loving homebody. I like 2 things in this world: my grandpa and not being bothered by people who have too much time on their hands. Grandpa Alonzo had taught me everything about building proper snowmen when I was a kid. You pack the snow tight, stack it wide, and you anchor the base around something solid. Our property came with an old concrete flagpole stump, and Grandpa showed me it was the perfect foundation. A classic Midwestern hack, he called it. Beverly Klein was the president of our HOA, and she was essentially a blowout heado with a bullhorn attached. She considered me a compliance risk because my porch light was warm white instead of the approved cool white, and because I had refused to join the neighborhood caroling WhatsApp group. She actually kept a binder in her office. I had seen it once through her window when I walked past. It was labeled "Price Ongoing" in big block letters. That should have been my first clue that this woman had way too much free time. That winter, Beverly decided to escalate her campaign against me. It started small, or at least what she probably thought was small. She mailed me a violation notice for non-compliant snow texture. Yes, you heard that right, snow texture. The notice came with an actual chart that ranked different types of snowflakes by their curb appeal value. I read it twice because I genuinely thought it might be a joke. It was not a joke. Beverly had spent hours creating a snowflake rating system, and apparently my front yard was attracting the wrong kind of precipitation. Then she walked my property with a tape measure and a trembling latte in her other hand. She was peering over my fence, taking measurements, photographing my compost pile like it was some kind of crime scene. I watched her from my kitchen window, and I have to admit, part of me was impressed by her dedication to being absolutely insufferable. The woman had commitment. I will give her that. The final straw came when she sent out an all-caps newsletter to the entire Pine Key community. The subject line was "Warning Rogue Snow, Art, and Seasonal Anarchy." She had included a blurry photo of my snowman that she must have taken from the street. She had drawn red circles all over it with digital annotations. One arrow pointed to the base with the phrase "possible rebar" written in bold. Another pointed to Grandpa's scarf with the word "unauthorized." I read the entire thing out loud to myself, just to make sure I was not hallucinating. I was not. I ignored all of it. Every single violation notice, every passive-aggressive newsletter, every measurement session with her sad little latte. I shoveled my driveway when it snowed. I salted my walkway. I placed Grandpa's old scarf on Frosty every morning because it made me think of him. The neighborhood kids absolutely loved the snowman. People stopped to take photos with it. Families posed next to it on their evening walks. Beverly fumed from her window across the street. I could see her watching, clutching that clipboard, probably adding notes to the price ongoing binder. Everything changed on a Tuesday at 4:15 in the afternoon. Beverly had apparently decided that she needed to prove once and for all that my snowman was an illegal hard-capping obstruction. She pulled her white SUV up to my property, idled it right across my driveway apron, and according to 3 different doorbell cameras and the city plow's dash cam, she gunned the engine straight at Frosty. She was even on the phone with another HOA board member at the time. One of the doorbell recordings picked up her voice saying, "Watch this. If it dents, then it is softscape." Frosty did not dent. The snowman's base was snug around that old city permitted flagpole stump that had been recorded on my property survey for decades. The stump was basically a brick cylinder set in concrete. Frosty absorbed the impact with the stoicism of something that had absolutely no reason to move. Beverly's bumper, on the other hand, did not handle things as well. The SUV crumpled on impact. Airbags exploded in her face. Her pearl necklace snapped and scattered across the dashboard like expensive popcorn. When the police officers arrived about 10 minutes later, Beverly was standing next to her wrecked SUV and she was pointing at me with a shaking finger. She announced loudly that they needed to arrest me for trap building. She demanded that my snowman be confiscated as evidence. One of the officers looked at the snowman, then at her destroyed front bumper, then back at her face, and I watched him try very hard not to laugh. The other officer was already reviewing footage from the doorbell cameras that the neighbors had offered up immediately. The Mapleford Police Department watched all the footage. So did the city code enforcement officer. So did Beverly's insurance adjuster, who showed up with a tablet and a very tired expression. The verdict came swift and it came hard. My snowman was decorative, seasonal art placed entirely on my private property. It was anchored to a long-existing, legally recorded flagpole footing that appeared on my title survey, completely legal in every possible way. Beverly, on the other hand, had deliberately left the public roadway. She had trespassed onto my driveway, which was private property. She had accelerated her vehicle into my seasonal decoration with clear intent. The doorbell audio had captured her saying, "Watch this," right before impact. Illegal on multiple counts. Negligent driving, property damage, trespass. The city code officer handed her 3 separate citations right there on the street, while neighbors watched from their windows. Her HOA authority ended at the public sidewalk. Her SUV ended at Frosty. Beverly's voice got higher and higher as the legal facts stacked up against her. The police explained that she would be receiving additional documentation about the incident. Her insurance company informed her that this would likely be classified as an at-fault accident with gross negligence. The HOA board members, who had previously applauded Beverly's so-called vigilance in neighborhood enforcement, went completely silent except for the treasurer, who asked out loud if the HOA insurance policy covered presidential field tests. The answer was no, it very much did not. Word spread through Pine Key faster than rocks salt on black ice. Within 2 days, an emergency HOA meeting was called at the community clubhouse. Beverly marched in wearing a neck brace that I was pretty sure was theatrical, and she was carrying that price ongoing binder like it was going to save her. I arrived with a thermos of hot cocoa and I had invited the tow truck driver as my guest. 3 parents from the neighborhood came with me, too, and they had somehow screen mirrored all the doorbell camera footage onto the clubhouse projector before Beverly even sat down. The video played on the big screen. Everyone watched Beverly say, "Watch this," into her phone. Everyone heard her rev the engine. Everyone saw Frosty barely wobble as her SUV crumpled like a soda can. There were audible gasps from the audience. One neighbor whispered to another, "She jousted at a snowman." Someone in the back started laughing and tried to cover it with a cough. It did not work. The whole room had seen everything. Then the treasurer stood up and revealed something that nobody had expected. Beverly had been issuing selective fines to certain homeowners for something she called winter clutter. She had been routing appeal fees into what she labeled a presidential discretionary compliance fund. The treasurer had done some digging after the Snowman incident made him suspicious. Turns out that fund was not being used for neighborhood improvements. It was being used to buy monogrammed gasoline gift cards and bulk orders of decorative cinnamon broomsticks for Beverly's personal use. The room went absolutely arctic. You could have heard a snowflake drop. The board voted right there on the spot. Beverly Clean was removed as HOA president, effective immediately. The city attorney, who had been sitting quietly in the back, stood up and announced that I would be filing a civil suit against Beverly for property damages and harassment. Beverly tried to object. She stood up, neck brace and all, and shouted that she had been defending property values. But the projector was still running, and it had frozen on a frame of her finger pointed at a snowman wearing my grandpa's scarf. Nobody was listening to her anymore. By mid-February, the consequences had fully landed. Beverly's driver's license was suspended for 6 months. Her insurance company had officially classified the claim as at fault with gross negligence, which meant her premiums were going to be astronomical if they even agreed to keep covering her. The court settlement required her to pay $15,000 for my cosmetic property repairs, my legal fees, and a charitable donation in Grandpa Lonzo's name to the Mapleford Youth Robotics Club. The judge also assigned Beverly to 100 hours of community service, which consisted of shoveling every single HOA sidewalk after every storm for